Many people, including myself, have been wondering where all the exclusives for the ninth generation of video game consoles are.
Where are they?
Killing is making a choice.
Where are they?
Console exclusives have been around since home consoles came out. Want to play Worm Womper but only have an Atari 2600? That's too bad because that game's only for the Intellivision. I didn't live through the time period, but I would say that exclusives began to be a big deal during the Sega Genesis and SNES era of gaming. The SNES had games like Super Mario World, Earthbound, Metroid, and Link to the Past. The Genesis had games like Sonic, Phantasy Star 4, Golden Axe, and Toe Jam and Earl, just to name a few. These exclusives helped to create a fierce rivalry between Sega and Nintendo, and there have been console rivalries since. Since exclusives have been such an important part of console gaming, many have said that today's consoles don't have many exclusives, and that there's really no point in buying them. I want to look at the past few generations of consoles to see what kind of exclusives we got before, then compare those to the exclusives we are getting today, and if there aren't many exclusives now, then we will speculate why that is. Let's start with the beginning of high-definition gaming with the 7th generation of consoles. This was the period of the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Wii. In my opinion, this was the start of the modern-day console wars. Each system was so unique and had an expansive catalog of games. It was a tough decision deciding which console to get. Let's start out with the Nintendo Wii.
We would like to play.
The Wii was a smash hit and started a revolution of motion controls. The pack-in title Wii Sports also became a huge hit and helped the console to become so popular. The Wii had a ton of great exclusives, but one problem was that the Wii had a bunch of exclusives that were shovelware. For every Mario Galaxy, there were a dozen games like Action Girls Racing. I won't even bother listing the notable exclusives on the Wii since there were so many of them. The Xbox 360 was the system for normies.
He's out of line, but he's right.
If you don't believe me, 5 out of the 11 best-selling games for the system were Call of Duty games. The Xbox 360 had a lot of popular exclusives, especially if you liked shooters. The two series that stand out are Halo and Gears of War. It also had other notable exclusives, including the Forza games, Alan Wake, Viva Pinata, and Fable 2. Even though I did bash on the Xbox 360 a bit, it was still a good console and had a lot of good exclusives. I will admit that I am biased for this generation of consoles. I grew up with a Wii and a PS3. A lot of people pitted the PS3 and the Xbox 360 together, and after losing in the first couple of rounds, I believe that the PS3 came out on top. It ended up selling more than the Xbox during the latter years of the console's life. All it took for them was to lower the price, get out good games, and stop having weird ads. The PlayStation 3 had great games like Uncharted, Infamous, Little Big Planet, MGS4, Tales of Exilia, God of War, Resistance, Heavy Rain, Killzone, The Last of Us, Ratchet & Clank, Fat Princess, and many more. Besides being great games, there were a large variety to these games. Having all these great games really helped the PS3 rise above the Xbox 360. Console wars aside, I think every console this generation had a noteworthy catalog of exclusives. I have fond memories of playing great games on each one. Even though I have my preferences, I think each console was solid and had something for everybody. However, this period of bliss would soon end with the 8th generation of consoles. Many have pondered about when gaming started to decline. I would say that it started during the 8th generation of consoles. This generation brought us the Wii U, PS4, and Xbox One. There were a lot of great games that came out during this generation, but there were also many that began to become formulaic and stale. It seems like the booming creativity of games from the 6th and 7th generation of gaming went away and got taken over by the greedy, business-minded people who could smell the money that gaming was bringing in. Maybe I'll go over this more in a future video, but for now, let's get back to exclusives, starting with the Wii U. The Wii U has been considered to be a failed console, especially after the Wii was so popular. During this time, Nintendo experimented with releasing their games on both the Wii U and 3DS, so a lot of the exclusives on it were also on the 3DS. There were a lot of hit exclusives like Splatoon, Pikmin 3, Mario Kart 8, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Super Mario 3D Land, Bayonetta 2, and many others. It was a rough period for Nintendo, and there were also some big misses like Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, Mario Party 10, Devil's Third, Sonic Boom, and Mario Tennis Aces, just to name a few. While the Wii U was hit and miss with its exclusives, it at least had an expansive library of them, which is something I can't say for the Xbox One. The Xbox One had a rough start. It started off with Kinect being pushed heavily, and Microsoft stated that you would always need to be online to use the Xbox. Also, it had a horrible name, which is a shame because the Xbox 360 was such a cool name. All of these factors put together had gamers saying,
"Don't call me. Don't come by my house. We're done."
Microsoft scrambled and fixed many of these issues, but they still didn't really do much with their console. During this generation, Microsoft was basically like,
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
They had a few Halo games, a billion Forza games, Gears of War 4 and 5, Sunset Overdrive, and a couple more. How did Microsoft think we'd react when one of their few exclusives is Power Star Golf? Here's the Wikipedia page for Xbox One only games. It doesn't include games that have since been ported to PC or elsewhere, but it currently has only 12 games.
You serious?
That's embarrassing. They've even admitted recently that they didn't do enough during this era, and we'll see if they've done better after looking at the PS4. I think the PS4 was another great system. It didn't have as many exclusives as the PS3, but it still had a good amount of them. There was Bloodborne, Spider-Man, Uncharted 4, a few more infamous games, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Until Dawn, Ghost of Tsushima, Dreams, and the best PS4 exclusive, Knack. The PS4 also had the demo PT, which was removed because Konami is Konami. PT was a great game and became influential for horror games. This generation of consoles wasn't bad, but I would argue it wasn't as strong as the previous one. In my opinion, there weren't as many iconic exclusives as there were in the previous generation. I think the Xbox One was the loser in terms of exclusives for this generation. Now let's look at the current generation of gaming. The Nintendo Switch started off this generation and has a lot of great exclusives. I won't go over them because there's so many, and I want to focus on the PS5 and Xbox Series. These two are the systems that people are questioning the exclusives of. The Xbox Series X has to be one of the worst names of a console ever. Did they ask Elon Musk to name it? Let's look at the Wikipedia page for Xbox Series only games. Oh wait, there isn't one. I spent some time searching for games that are only on the Xbox Series and couldn't find anything. You might be saying, what are you talking about? There's a bunch of Xbox exclusive games. But a lot of these games are also on the Xbox One or PC, so they aren't really exclusive. There are some good ones like Hi-Fi Rush, but that game is on Steam. There's also some bad games like Redfall and some divisive games like Starfield, but those are also on Steam. Somehow they've done even worse than the Xbox One. If they want to sell consoles, they shouldn't put the games out on Game Pass and Steam the same time they do on the system. Let's see if Sony has continued the trend of delivering good exclusives by looking at the PS5. Here's the Wikipedia page for PS5 only games.
Whoa, I think I just figured something out, Beavis.
What?
This sucks.
Yeah, it really sucks.
This is a complete joke. You can almost count the amount of games on your hands. You might be saying, but what about Spider-Man Miles Morales or God of War Ragnarok?
Not so fast.
Those games were also released on the PS4, and now you can get Miles Morales on Steam. I have no doubt that the games probably look and play better on the new consoles, but if you have the old system right now, when the economy is going downhill and money is tight, you don't have that much of an incentive to go out and buy the new console. Honestly, the most notable exclusives right now that I can see are Spider-Man 2 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which are both very recent games. I remember when the console came out that the big games people talked about were the Demon's Souls remake and Astro's Playroom, which from what I've seen is more of a tech demo for the PS5 mixed with a love letter to the PlayStation systems as a whole than a full-fledged game. Not exactly games that make gamers have to flood to stores to buy the consoles, which they couldn't anyways when they came out. So what happened to these consoles and their exclusives? I think one of the biggest issues was when they were released. They came out during a huge pandemic when manufacturing and shipping had many issues. It didn't help that scalpers hoarded these consoles to sell for insane markups. I'm planning on talking about those lovable people in the future, so subscribe so you don't miss it. It took a while for people to even get their hands on a console. Also, there's not much of an incentive to release a game on a console that is mostly being hoarded by scalpers. I think the second thing that didn't help is that their exclusives aren't even exclusive. A lot of the games are either available on previous generation consoles or on PC. In my opinion, they should release the game first on next gen, then release the previous generation versions a few days or weeks later, then wait a few months or so to port to PC. They do that with some games, like Spider-Man Miles Morales was released on PC years after the console versions, but it doesn't seem like Microsoft has the faith to do that. They're even just releasing their new games on Game Pass right away, which is great for people who have Game Pass, but if you want to sell more games, they could wait a month. Then again, they'll have to do a little bit better than games like Redfall. One of the other big issues is that games are taking so long to make. Big game companies have thousands of people working on a game, and it still takes years for it to come out. I think it's good to take time to polish a game and make it the best possible, but I think there's many things that can be scaled back. A lot of modern games are padded to death. For example, I've heard many complain about God of War Ragnarok and recent Assassin's Creed games having a lot of padding. Not every game needs to be a 70-hour RPG. It's okay to have the game be 20 to 30 hours instead of 50 to 60 hours if that means more games can be made and that there's less repetitive gameplay. Look at Hi-Fi Rush. It's a unique game that was suddenly dropped. It's a shorter experience and was priced lower than most AAA games, and it was heavily praised. If studios made 3 solid games like that instead of a buggy mess of a game like Redfall, players would be much happier, and there will be many more exclusives to sell the consoles. One final issue I wanted to go over is a super recent one. Many game studios have been laying off hundreds of employees and canning a bunch of planned titles. While it's no fun to be laid off, and I can completely empathize with those laid off, I think this could potentially be a good thing for the future. This can give studios an opportunity to reassess and make better choices. I think they should have smaller teams working on multiple smaller games. What's the point of having thousands of employees working on a Rush Call of Duty game that will just get replaced the next year? Have those people split up into other teams and make unique games. We've seen tons of recent examples of games made by smaller teams that have had huge success. If the big companies want to be more successful and please more players, they should go that route. Exclusives are an important part of gaming. Look at Nintendo. People love the Switch because they can play all the Nintendo games on it. I think console gaming is also important. You usually play a console on a bigger TV and on a couch. There's a different vibe to it than PC gaming. Having physical copies of games is also important. There have been many games on Steam that I've wanted, but they're no longer available. This is why consoles are important to have, and exclusives are important for consoles to have, or else what's the point of the console? The Switch has been doing great in this regard. The reason I have barely mentioned it is because while not being as powerful as the others, it is the current king of exclusives. It's embarrassing that the PS5 and Xbox Series consoles barely have any exclusives. Gamers need to admit it, and the companies need to admit it and do better. Don't defend mediocrity. Fight for a better future of gaming. If you keep fighting for it, someone will eventually listen, and gaming can be a better and more creative space. What are your thoughts on the current state of exclusives? Do you have a favorite console exclusive series? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked this video, please subscribe and leave a like. We are halfway to our 100 subscriber goal, so if you're not yet subscribed, please do so we can meet this goal. If you want to see more videos like this, check out the recommended video or go to my channel. Thanks for watching and for your support of the channel.